So, welcome back. And we are going to change it up a little bit today. We are going to answer your questions. So, Kanan actually came up with this idea. Thank you for coming up with it.
Oh my gosh, it's like literally my job, I think.
Well, you are amazing at it. So,
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you. This show is so great. I'm glad you're like doing it.
oh
I'm
my,
glad-
we have the most fun.
Yeah, just planning this show is fun. And then sometimes for those of you listening, I wish sometimes we hit the record button on some of our pre-planning meetings because
I
we
know.
get into some deep conversations where we're just coming up with questions or topics to talk about. And I'm just like, imagine people could hear this sometimes. Anyway, but yeah, so the idea of this episode came because we're so many of you ask questions in the Facebook group and online in our DMs on Instagram, as well as through our email address at datesmartersexier@gmail.com. And so we wanted to create a show once a month, or at least every 10th show. We're going to answer the questions that you have been sending to us anonymously, of course. We're not going to say who is sending these questions.
Dear
And we're
God,
just, yeah, no, because which then allows you to be able to ask us anything you want. Just know that we'll never say your name. And we're actually working on something to be able to allow you to be even more anonymous than just sending us a message via DM, email, or etc. But look for that in the future. So we want to answer your questions today. So I'll give it back over to Andrea.
let's start with the questions.
Yes, let's go.
All right. So the first question we're gonna throw out there. I saw this on the Facebook group. Like we said, we're not gonna say who question. We're not gonna say who asked it. Um, but here's the question: do aggressive communicators attract passive communicators?
Mm,
So here's a quick rundown for everyone who doesn't already know the four styles of communication. It's aggressive, passive aggressive, and assertive. Only one of them are effective.
Oh, okay. So, wow. So, in my mind, I have all this time. I've been thinking aggressive and assertive are kind of the same thing. I will say. I didn't realize there was four. I always thought there was just two: passive and aggressive. So you said aggressive, passive aggressive, and assertive. Huh.
Yes. Which
Okay.
one do you think is the only effective communication style?
I would have to say assertive because it's
Awesome.
clear
Yep.
communication, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you use assertive communication, you really understand where your boundaries are and
Mhm,
you really understand how to stick to conversations where you're saying how you feel.
mhm.
It's not saying, when you do this, this makes me feel this way. That's not assertive communication. Assertive communication just simply says, I'm feeling this, or it says, this is the problem that we have in the relationship. How can you and I together work on this problem versus you're the problem?
Wow. I've actually had an eye-opening moment there because in the past, even when I think I'm being assertive, I've usually started this statement with, when you do this, it makes me feel that you don't care about me. Or when you
Oh,
approach it like this, it makes me feel fill in the blank.
right. And you're telling the other person they're the problem.
Mm.
And so we don't want to do that, right? We don't
Okay.
want to put someone else down while we're trying to explain how we're feeling. So, to answer this question specifically, aggressive communicators, yes, will often seek out passive communicators. We talked in a previous episode about attachment styles,
Hmm.
where you have the anxious, the avoidant, and the secure. The secure attachment style is going to be the assertive communicator. The anxious attachment style is going to be more of that passive or passive aggressive communicator. And that avoidant could also be very passive aggressive or aggressive. And
Hmm.
so, yes, often you will see anxious attachment styles seeking out um, the avoidant attachment styles and vice versa. And the same thing goes with communicators. We, if we are an aggressive communicator, then sometimes we do feed off of that attention, and being able to communicate effectively is not really, a lot of times aggressive communicators think that I'm communicating so well. I'm such a good communicator.
We know those people.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and don't get me wrong, I've been there myself. How many times have I told people like I'm an amazing communicator?
Mhm,
Well, not always, because just because you might be an assertive communicator doesn't mean you're always going to be assertive. There
mhm,
are going to be times where you're going to be triggered and you're going to be a passive aggressive communicator. It's just how we work as people. But yeah, I do really think that a lot of times we don't recognize our communication styles, or we're just not aware of them.
mhm,
And so the passive communicator and the aggressive communicator will often seek each other out.
mm. Is it almost like I can imagine that for the passive aggressive person, it's kind of a shelter in a way to go after the aggressive type of person, where it's like, okay, if I go to him or her or they, it's going to be an energy where they're going to make all the decisions. If anything happens, they're going to be the first to jump up and take care of the situation. Whereas if I'm passive aggressive, I'm kind of wishy-washy. I don't want to really commit, because if I commit to this and it doesn't work out, then it's my fault. Or
Mhm.
if I could, it's like a whole bunch of issues that go on in the mind of someone that's passive aggressive. So I can see why aggressive people would attract a lot of. Here's something
Mhm.
I just thought of. Would an aggressive person attract an assertive person? Or would
Ooh.
they bump heads?
um, that's a great question.
'Cause I'm just picturing it in my head. Like I can imagine the one person where they're like, because in my mind, aggressive is almost like hard-headed, like you think you know it all. Whereas the
Right.
assertive person is like, well, you don't know it all, so let's just do it this way.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So think of it again, those attachment styles, the assertive and the secure.
Mhm,
Most assertive communicators are a secure attachment style. So they know when to back down and not create drama or not become aggressive themselves.
mm,
So an aggressive communicator trying to be attacking, because that's how they usually communicate, they attack, right?
mhm,
They may try and put you down, they may try and tell you you're doing things wrong, does whatever it is. The assertive communicator will be able to calmly respond and say, okay, I hear you, but maybe we can try to come up with a solution that works for both of us
mm. Okay,
and
I see what you mean.
slightly diffuse the situation.
Okay. Um, so with the assertive personality, is it yeah, would they be the most successful in relationships
Well,
out of
if
the
you,
4?
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, in a
yeah,
nutshell and a
yeah,
quick answer,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's kind of the hardest to be if you really it's almost like being completely yourself, being calm, being patient, being centered, being all these things that's supposed to make you like the best person you can be. So I would imagine finding an assertive lover is slightly challenging, which brings you to another question that was kind of similar to the one that this person asked in the group. They asked, is passive aggressive communication common? I remember personally for people that I know, they will always call their mates passive aggressive, or you even hear it online. You know, there's this whole chitter chatter now that it's becoming more common where, oh, this person's passive aggressive, that person's passive aggressive, block all that negativity out. So is passive aggressive the most common, even though assertive is the most successful and aggressive is whatever? Like, is this the most common out of them?
I think so. I think you see it a lot when people are back feeling like they're backed into a corner.
Mhm.
Um, like I said before, an assertive communicator can tap into the aggressive communication style. They can tap into that passive aggressive communication style. You are never going to be just one communication style for most of the, for all of the time.
Yeah.
But most of the time, you're going to try to tap into that assertive communication if that's your main communication style. Now, a passive aggressive communicator, they're the communicator that is really afraid of confrontation as well in the moment, right? This is not all the time, but in the moment, when you are passive aggressively communicating something, you are trying to avoid a conversation, the real conversation.
Mhm.
It's a little bit of an avoidant behavior. This person's going to use sarcasm a lot.
Yeah. And
The-
sarcasm is actually kind of popular. Like we love the sarcastic like I remember growing up characters like Daria or even Janine Garofalo's whole comedic
Mm,
branding is all about being sarcastic and dry. And even dry humor still to this day is very common because it's rooted almost it's kind of passive aggressive honestly. People laugh, but every time the person says something in that tone, it's almost like, do you or don't you want this?
right. And that is absolutely passive aggressive communication.
Yeah. And do you, I mean, to answer the question, passive aggressive communication is the most common for people, or is the jury still kind of out on that?
I mean, there's a lot of quizzes. You can go online and take a quiz to see if, what your main communication style is. Um, and there's a lot of research behind the communication styles. There are some professionals and experts out there that believe that there should have been two more added to it.
Hmm.
That submissive is really a communication style. Um,
That's not the same as passive.
Well, that's the thing. So there's only really four main ones that have been officially identified, but you will find that experts are trying to argue that manipulative and submissive are also communication
Oh,
styles.
yes.
So there is mixed research out there, and I think we're still learning.
Wow. Yeah, because that you point out manipulative, that's actually, I mean, I can think of certain people who were where their dating style was almost manipulative, where it's
Absolutely.
and it's not, it's almost like emergence of aggressive and passive aggressive. It's like I'm a strong arm you while smiling in your face. It's like it's yeah. Well, this next question that came to us that I thought was really good. Where is it? Um, and this is a more lighthearted question. This is a fun one. Where does one find age appropriate singles in their area without going to a bar? Because I too talk to some of my friends and they're always saying, "Oh God, it's always about the bar or Tinder or some swipe app. I don't want to do that." What are some suggestions to singles in their local
To
area?
avoid bars and to avoid online.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, It's interesting because I have worked with quite a few individuals who are recovering addicts. And so going to a bar is not even an option for them. And that's
Mhm.
got to be very frustrating. But there are a lot of really amazing ways to meet someone. So here's number one.
Ooh,
If you're religious, if you're not, this isn't going to work for you. But those of you who are to any degree, go to church, whatever religion you are, whatever belief you have, whatever faith you have, find your people, find your group. If you are a Buddhist, find your Buddhist group, right? If you are a new age thinker who likes to read a lot of books like Eckhart Tolle and you believe in that, the power of presence and all of that, then find your group. They're out there. Find your people because having the same values is key to a successful relationship, to a
that is
healthy
so true.
relationship. If you share the same values, then that's great. Now, on the flip side of that, don't go to church to find a wholesome partner if you aren't the same
Wholesome.
way.
Yeah.
How many times do you hear people who are like, yeah, I'm going to go find myself a good woman at church? Are
Meanwhile,
you
they're a
kidding me?
playboy.
Right. Don't go there. You're not going to
Yeah.
have the same values. You're not going to have anything in common. So if
Yeah.
you aren't yourself practicing that faith, then don't go there.
Yeah,
So,
because people could smell that kind of right away anyway, like when you're not genuinely there
of
for the
course.
purpose of that religion or church. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Which makes sense because if you're at a bar, I mean, the only thing you really have in common at the moment is you both like alcohol.
exactly. And that's not
Mm.
enough to sustain a relationship. Here's another suggestion. If you are not faith based and that is not going to work for you, try meetups.
Mm,
Every
meetups.
city has meetups. When I lived in England, I found them in England just to meet new people. I
Mhm,
found them here in the Central Coast in California. So they're everywhere.
mm,
Meetup.com, and this is not a plug for meetup.com by any
mhm,
means, but meetups in general, whether you find them on that meetup app or if you find them on Facebook groups, because a lot of Facebook groups will be in your area as well to meet up in person.
mhm.
Find common interest, a hiking group, a book group, TED Talk groups. You have something in common with these people. Now, while they're not designed for singles, that doesn't matter. You're going to meet like minded people who have similar interests, who A, might be single themselves and looking for a partner, or B, might know someone who's also like minded and can set you up. So,
Mhm.
what a great place to find people that have similar interests and hobbies.
That's a fantastic idea, and to piggyback off of that, because it's kind of the same exact thing as meetup groups. Like I noticed on like Facebook groups, a lot of those groups, if you have a certain interest, every so often they'll throw an event where people come in person. Like I'm a part of this one group for people who enjoy wearing kilts, and every so often they throw like a pub crawl where everyone who enjoys kilts and the men or women that like them get together and go around to different pubs. So there's a chance you can meet someone single if you're into kilts or wearing kilts. But that's just an example. But I was
Yeah,
also thinking like Eventbrite events. Like they have unique events on their website that aren't necessarily like always concerts or shows, but they have things
right.
that are like interesting, like, interesting kinds of fairs, like, a steampunk fair or something interesting like that, and if you go and you're into that, you can meet people, and one more is Course Horse, where you can take I don't know if they're doing in person again, but they do, like, different kinds of courses in person. Because I remember back in Brooklyn, I took a class on sushi making. They do all kinds of courses, and there were some single people there, so if you're into, like, learning how to
Absolutely.
make foods and stuff, you can take these courses as a single person or a couple as a
Mhm.
couple which goes to one of our questions later as a couple building exercise and you can meet people make friends and everything so just to piggyback off of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every city, doesn't matter how big or small your city is, there are going to be groups that do cooking classes, that do pottery classes, that do art classes, that do, it doesn't matter what it is, whatever you want to learn. If you're just kind of playing around with, maybe I'll try learning, I don't know, for example, the ukulele,
Yeah.
to throw a random one out there, and you
Yeah.
join a group and you're learning and you meet someone else in the group who happens to be single and it's wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then you get to know each other, but you have some kind of common ground to start on.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
All right, I'm going to throw out the next one.
Let's hear it.
Um cool
So
cool.
wait, so to recap before we move on, the two things we suggest for singles to find people to meet is local meetup groups or church if they're faith-based.
We kind of threw out three. The third one is finding some kind of course or learning activity.
Okay, so course or learning activity, meetups, or church.
Yeah.
Perfect for those of you listening.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
This next question that we are going to answer, we've answered a few times actually, and I think I've answered it on Instagram a couple of times. I've answered it on YouTube, but the reason why I'm throwing this one out yet again is because this is a huge one. I'm going to read the question first. When a woman is telling me about a problem, how do I keep myself from trying to solve it?
Ooh,
This is a question that came from a man.
mansplaining.
And this is a little bit more for those heterosexual couples out there. Um, Although I do find that women who are more in tune with their masculine energy, more so than their feminine side, will also do this. Same thing with men, but I've seen a lot of women do this as well. Um, I have to admit, I've done it myself. When friends have come to me and asked, telling me about their day or telling me about a situation with their partner, and I go into this fix it mode, like, oh, I got to fix this problem for you.
Mhm,
And I realize, oh no, that's right. Women don't want that. They just want a sympathetic ear.
mhm,
Um, but it happens a lot with men when they're trying to date women. The woman is telling them about, this challenge that they had at work, and they go into their fix it mode of,
mhm,
okay, I must figure out a way to fix this problem. And she's going, no,
mhm,
please don't.
mhm.
Um,
I can immediately see the issue there. He's not listening.
right. Yeah, there's a YouTube video out there that has a couple sitting on a couch, and she's got a nail in her forehead.
Oh my god.
And he's trying to constantly tell her, like, you just have to take the nail out of your head and you won't have a headache anymore, honey. And she keeps interrupting him and she's like, you're just not listening to me. It's hilarious. It's such a strange video, but you know, it's just how we communicate, it's how we listen. So the best way to recognize this is someone is telling you about a challenge that they had in their day. Maybe it was from work. And to be a true empathetic listener, you need to just shut your mouth and nod.
Yeah, I agree. And that was, yeah, I actually would say for gay relationships too, it's sometimes it's kind of sort of the same. I've seen it in lesbian relationships where the more
Mhm.
aggressive personal communicator is instantly goes into fix it modes, or even in my relationship sometimes my husband, he's in marketing, so he tends to be a problem solver. So there are times when I'm expressing something I'm frustrated about and he's automatically trying to figure out how can I fix this issue so he doesn't feel like this anymore. And then
Right.
I get frustrated because I keep going on, but he keeps telling me, no, you just do this, do this, do this, do this. I'm like, you're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. So I definitely, and usually what all I really want is just someone to listen, just be a sounding board to be like, yes, yes. Because a lot of times us just talking it out, whether it's me or a female not feeling like her boyfriend or whoever she's dating is not listening, it just you just wanna talk it out loud so then you
Right.
can, like, work it. Because a lot of times if it just sits in your head, it's confusing, but speaking it out loud and seeing someone nodding and responding or just listening, not responding, listening, you hear yourself saying it, and then you're like, "Okay, okay, now I see what it is."
And you can respond with questions. If you need to clarify or if you're not following, it's okay to ask like a clarifying question or to even like sum up what they're saying so that they
Mhm,
know that you're hearing them correctly. Like they're talking about, an issue that they had with their boss at work, for example, and you sum up, so what I hear you saying is X, Y, and Z happened.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I was following. Like that's okay too, because you want to make sure that you're understanding them correctly. And yes, often people can come to their own solutions, but a lot of times it's not looking for a solution for anything. It's created this emotional turmoil in me and I need to release it or it's just going to bubble up and explode.
Yeah.
And honestly, in your relationship, you don't want their work stuff bubbling up and exploding in your relationship.
No.
And there's no guarantee it's going to happen at work when it explodes. So they
Yeah,
have to release it.
yeah,
And so let them release a little steam and just listen
yeah.
and be empathetic and
Yeah.
understanding and
Yeah.
just hear what they have to say. If they want your opinion, they're going to ask for it.
Exactly. And I feel like all of us, including myself, 'cause I know I do it sometimes too. I'm not guilt free of it, but it's just that's it. Just listen sometimes. Don't worry about because I feel like we instantly go into our response mode. Like, oh yeah, they're talking. Oh, what am I gonna say? What profound thing am I gonna say? It's like just chill out and listen. And since you asked, I feel like this question that was in the group kind of goes towards that in a way
Yeah.
where maybe we can answer this. Someone asked, um, how do you ask a partner to do something or not do something without coming off harsh or critical? Because we're all afraid of being the nagging partner. Where it's like, can you do this? Can you do this? Or I don't like it when you do that, but we're afraid sometimes to offend our partner, which probably goes back to one of those questions we were talking about earlier about being afraid to communicate what you're feeling.
Right. So just don't be a passive aggressive communicator when you're asking for what you need. Make sure that you're asking in an assertive communication style. It
Is
does. It
tone
kind of all circles back around. And yes, tone. Tone is important.
okay? Yeah,
But the way that you ask, right?
yeah,
Um, the facial expressions that you make too
yeah.
will play into that because that's all language. Is body language is still communicating. It's still a communication style. And so if you're going to ask, I don't know, let's throw an example out there for that question. If your partner isn't cleaning up after themselves
Mhm.
and you want to ask them yet again to put the dishes in the dishwasher, you know, how often do you hear someone say, "Can you please put your dishes in the dishwasher?" How much sarcasm is there?
So much.
That's passive aggressive.
Yeah.
So find a way to assertively ask or to assertively explain how you're feeling about it because you're probably feeling very frustrated and that's okay to share with your partner, but you need a solution to it. Just asking them, "Can you please do something that you never do?"
Mhm.
is never going to get you the result that you want.
Well,
They're not ever putting their dishes in the dishwasher. Stop asking them to do something they're not doing. Instead, come up with another solution together.
yeah. I've noticed in my relationship when it comes to things that I want done, especially like things around the house, like I don't know if this is it's not a trick in my mind. It's just if I want something done, I just do it and I do it visibly in front of my partner. So it's like I'm doing this. So if I do it enough, they'll start to I feel like in their mind, they
That's
start to
passive
be
aggressive.
like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
I'm sorry, I had a sneeze.
Oh, did you? That was a sneeze.
That's so passive aggressive, but that's passive aggressive body language.
That's true.
That's please read between the lines
That is
instead of
true.
just assertively saying, "Babe, this is what's happening. How can we solve this together?"
Mhm. That is passive aggressive. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. You're right. No, I'm not sorry, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Jeez. Whew. So, next question.
I'll go. Here's a good one. Why do we always want what we can't have?
Mm, what do you think?
I think we need a few hours to answer this one.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
There's so many movies made about this very thing, like Shallow Hal and stuff like that, where it's always about, the guy wanting the girl that's way out of his league or vice versa or whatever,
Mhm.
the really, really poor person wanting the really, really rich person or, it's we're always like, oh, the grass is so much greener over there.
Right. There's a lot of reasons. There are definitely a lot of reasons, and maybe at some point we need to do an entire episode on this topic.
Mhm.
But just to name a few of the few of the reasons why this can happen. Um, sometimes it's just being excited about the thrill and the chase of
Mhm.
it. For some people, it's like, oh, like you said, the grass is always greener. Oh, I want that. Oh, now I want that. Those are those that once they get you or they get what they wanted, what they were chasing, they're done.
Mm.
So you'll see it a lot of times in relationships where one person is heavily pursuing the other person. And then as soon as they get them, they're like, great, that this is boring now. The thrill is gone. So I think I'm going to go find someone else so that I can heavily pursue and chase after. Another common reason is that we need to be validated, and it gives us a sense of validation, right? If we are accepted by that person, it gives us a sense of validation, and our ego can be satisfied now,
Mm.
right? Hashtag
Mhm.
winning.
Mm.
And for some people, it's, you know, being attracted to the unpredictability of another person.
Mm.
I can't figure this person out. I want to figure them out. And as soon as you become predictable, and as soon as they get to know you well enough and you're predictable, now they're like, oh, okay, I got it. Good. Next.
What is that rooted in? Is it rooted in uh, someone that's just unhappy with everything, or like what drives that, do you think?
Um, I think a lot of times our sense of desire comes from both our pleasure, but also our pain body as well.
Mhm.
And so our pain body gets triggered a lot. And when you've been hurt in previous relationships, sometimes going forward, it's constantly being triggered over and over and over again. And so that's what's familiar to you. And now you're just
Mm.
going after what's familiar, even though those are often the same people who are like, I just want to settle down. I want to meet my person and be together forever. But you're just so used to that disappointment, or you're so used to chasing after things that you don't actually want, but you think you want. You're so used to, there's women out there that are so used to being love bombed, not realizing that that's actually not a healthy pursuit. That's not a
Oh,
healthy way
love
to be courted.
bomb. I've heard of that before. Is that where someone like just wines and dines you like over the
Mhm.
top? So it's like they're in love with dating, the beginnings of dating.
Right.
Or people who, I think there's men and women who are obsessed with getting married. Not necessarily being married, but the
Mhm.
process of having the wedding
Mhm.
and going through it. And I think once all that dies off after they get married, they get bored.
Those are the people I think that say, "Oh, I love love." No, you love marriage. There's a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's that sense of being in love, right? In
Mhm.
those beginning stages of being in love, there's all of this passion, there's all of this chemistry, and chemistry will come and go in a relationship, but connection, that bond that you get from connection, now
Mhm.
that's different. That's, in my opinion, a healthy relationship. In my opinion, that's what we should kind of be striving for.
Mm. I agree. Wow, I feel like we've Christ, because I'm like still sitting here in my passive aggressiveness from that revelation that I had earlier. So that's actually, I mean, I've been listening, but at the same time, I did have an eye-opening moment there where I was like, huh, how have I been communicating all this? I hope those of you listening had a moment too where you're like, dang, I've been doing it the wrong way this whole time.
There's so much to understanding how we communicate,
Yeah.
so much. But it's really important if you want a healthy relationship to learn about your communication style, to learn about how people around you communicate. You're not
Mm-hmm.
going to go out there and change how everyone communicates.
Mm-hmm.
That's not your goal. That's not your job. That's not what you should be doing. All you can do is see how you respond, how it
Mm-hmm.
affects you, and the choices that you make. So if
Yeah.
someone is aggressively communicating with you, you can identify it and say, look, you know what, I'm gonna be assertive about this, but I'm gonna try and communicate to the best of my ability.
Mm,
That's all we can do.
yeah. And don't go after things that you think you want that you really don't want. Which I think is a form of, like, poor communication with yourself in a way. It's not even listening to yourself. So, basically, the other symptoms that we've been talking about in this episode is an issue of not listening to your partner or listening to the other
Right.
person, and then the other one is not listening to yourself. So, basically, communication is listening. Would you
Yeah,
say
and
that?
knowing what you want, right? Tapping into yourself and understanding what you want,
Mhm.
then you can be a little bit better at listening to other people and knowing
Wow.
whether or not it's a good fit with that person.
Mm. Do we have time for one more question? Do you have one more?
Yeah, we can do another one.
Well, yeah, let's do one more question.
Do you want to do one or do you want me to do one?
Um,
We have different
let's
lists for our listeners so they know
yeah.
like
Yeah,
what's
just so you
happening.
know, like we're like we both get questioned. Well, I comb the Facebook groups for a lot of your questions that I see you asking other people within the comment section, and I notice a lot of your questions, not a lot of your questions do get answered, but I do notice some questions do
Mhm.
go unanswered. So I definitely want to grab some of those questions and make sure that we answer here in the show. So
Definitely.
always ask questions in the group, send us questions in a DM, send us questions to datesmartersexier@gmail.com. You have 3 ways, and we're going to keep the list going. Whatever we don't answer today, we're going to answer in our next episode. But I definitely want to get to one more question. And I think, Andrea, let's answer one of your questions.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh goodness. Oh, here's a good one.
What?
How do you know when to keep trying or when to let go?
Oh,
So, I'm going to assume a lot of people are feeling this right now coming out of COVID,
mm-hmm.
being post pandemic. A lot of things are opening up. I know every state is different and every country is so different. And I know we're much further ahead than a lot of other countries. So if anyone does listen to this from another country, I apologize. Not to be the snotty Americans that we are, where we're opening up.
Yeah. We do
Um,
have some listeners in Greece, I noticed, but yeah.
oh
We
wow,
do,
that's so
yeah,
cool.
that's so cool.
Um, so yeah, everything is kind of getting back to normal and people are now, the news has been talking about how the divorce rate went up
Mm,
since the pandemic.
I know some
People,
couples, yeah.
people were really stuck at home on top of each other and their relationships worked because they were able to have their separate times.
Mhm,
They were able to travel for work or be outside the home. And now what's happened is they've realized some of the issues that they had in their relationship are at the forefront and they're in their face and they've realized, I don't know if we can make this work. Whether you've tried therapy together or not tried therapy, it doesn't, you know, therapy's great, but
mhm,
therapy also can really help you understand whether or not you should just give up, right?
mhm,
Um, so the quick answer, the easiest and the quickest way to answer this is when you get to a point where you are having less time together that's happy. So when your time together is becoming more and more about the fight, more and more about the challenge, more and more about the sadness, that is when you need to look at it and say, I don't know if this is worth fighting for anymore.
mhm,
We're having less time together that is happy, that's joyful. It doesn't mean that you can't salvage it. You can't go and, go to therapy together or go to therapy separately or work on yourself separately and then come back and try and fix it. But when you're in a relationship where it's getting worse and worse and worse, and you and your partner are both very unhappy, then what are you fighting for?
Yeah.
Because you just don't want to be the one to give up.
Or you don't want the shame of people like, "Oh, you're single again?" or some crap like that.
Right.
Because I think some people get caught up in, "Oh, we look so good together.
Mhm.
We're a power couple." And I think that sometimes keep people together. I mean, for
Yeah.
couples who have kids, it makes perfect sense. You don't wanna break up your household sometimes, just to have the upbringing that you desire for your kids. But that aside, I think some people are afraid of the supposed shame they might feel of ending relationship that looks successful on paper.
Of course, you don't want to sometimes admit to your friends and family or coworkers, I failed.
Yeah,
This didn't work. But it doesn't
yeah,
mean you failed.
yeah,
The relationship failed. You didn't fail. Your
yeah,
partner didn't fail.
yeah,
The relationship fell apart in whatever way. Maybe you weren't meant to be together.
yeah.
But don't stop yourself from going out there and finding the right person, the right partner to be with, the healthy relationship. You deserve to be happy. Your
Hmm.
partner deserves to be happy. You guys were miserable together. So maybe it's time to say, we tried. I've had enough. Let's
Hmm.
move our own directions.
Yeah, I agree. I remember my first ex. We had such a great relationship when we were together. He was Dominican, so I learned all about the Dominican culture. He had two kids, so I didn't really see them, but he had two kids. We had dogs together. At one point, we bought a house. Well, I bought a house, but anyways, we had a house together. Um, but towards the end of our relationship, I was holding on to it because we were always known as Canaan and blank or
Mhm.
blank and Canaan. And it was just like, oh no, we can't end. Everybody, your family I guess they like me. My family likes you. So it's like, we can't end this. But when we finally decided to separate, we had a very passionate relationship. And we finally decided to separate. He met someone and he's been with the same person since
Aw.
we broke up. And that was back in maybe 2010, 9, 8, one of those. And he's been with the same person since then. So it's just like, just because your relationship is not working doesn't mean that you don't have an opportunity or that person doesn't have an opportunity to meet someone. Because if I stood in the way of that, he would have never met this guy and they would not have had their long lasting relationship somewhere where he always wanted to be. So I think sometimes when we block ourselves from like ending those relationships that are working out like that, are just not happy anymore, we're kind of like standing in the way of our own happiness and our own
Absolutely.
success. Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
Don't get in the way of your own success, right?
yeah, yeah. There's no point in being miserable every day just to save face.
No, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it, and the longer that you stay in a very unhappy relationship, the worse it gets, the more it takes onto your body. You see
Hmm.
people gaining weight or becoming unhealthy, it's because they're bottling up all that emotion and it comes out in their
Yeah.
physical ailments happen. So take care of yourself, take care of your partner, take care of themselves. It's not easy to break up. It's not easy to separate from a relationship, whether it was 5 months, 5 years, 15 years. It doesn't matter how long it was. It's never an easy process, but if you have faith in yourself that you have the strength to get through it, you will heal. You will
Hmm.
eventually move on and find some person, yourself maybe, or another person that makes you feel very happy, that's very fulfilling. That's really what we're looking for at the end of the day, is just having a fulfilling relationship with people.
Yeah, I agree. And on that note,
Yes, on that note, this has been a really fun episode. I love that we're doing this. Like Kanan said, we're going to do every 10th episode, we're going to do an answer your questions.
Yeah, because I still have 2 questions here. No, 3 that I didn't get to, so I'm gonna save those for our next show for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we're going to get more questions coming in. So if you want us to address your questions, feel free to pop them up on the Facebook group, Date Smarter Sexier, or you can email them to us, or you can ask them via Instagram, however you want to find us. We're on YouTube now, we're everywhere, right? And I just saw recently that Facebook groups is going to change the way that they operate and come off of Facebook just like Messenger did, so that
Mhm.
people can join groups and not have to be on Facebook. So I'm very curious to see how that ends up looking when all said and done.
Yeah, because I think what keeps some people from getting on those groups, which actually is great because there are a lot of let's be honest, there's a lot of anti-Facebook people out there, or people
Absolutely.
that are into other things besides social media,
Hmm.
but they still have interests. They still
Right.
enjoy their hobbies. And they still want to link with people who like the exact same thing. So at least now this creates an opportunity to be able to communicate with people like you without having to be on Facebook. So I think it's fantastic.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Cool.
I will be talking to you in our next episode.
Until next time.